Okay, so first off, in the first video, which is called Plessy versus Ferguson, um, it's mainly just talking about the 14th Amendment and the separate but equal thing, which honestly I didn't know was part of the 14th Amendment. And I've heard of separate but equal, but didn't know about I knew obviously they were separate, but I didn't realize that the reason they justified it was because it's equal but separate, when it obviously wasn't very equal. And so yeah, learned mainly that it was part of 14th Amendment, and to that the reason they justified it was because it's equal, even though it wasn't equal. And this brought into other things like like the one girl who couldn't get into law school because there was none. And so when they challenged it, they were like, oh yeah, I guess we have to give it to her to be equal. But even that, it was a single room and like two teachers in the courthouse to be called the school just so it can be equal, but that isn't equal. And so obviously it wasn't. And then they tried to put a fence in the class for another thing to separate the black and white students, which is just insane. And obviously that eventually just led to the end of segregation in schools. And also that they really put an emphasis on the 14th Amendment during this time, and most of these challenges were emphasizing the 14th Amendment. It started with the separation but equal as part of oh yeah, they can be separate, but we just need a version over here. And then as time went on, they started really focusing more in on the equal until there was just total desegregation in schools, even though the South didn't want to do that. And then in the last video, women's rights, it's the same thing except with not sexual, like your sex, not sexual orientation. And the things I learned are mainly just that feminism now is kind of, it is just a version of women's rights, and women's rights have been going back for a long time. And before it was focusing on the separate but equal, but now it's going into the whole bigger equal protection clause for everyone by bringing in women's rights as well, and allowing them to do the same work that other people have without being withheld from it, to protect the weaker sex, which was just an excuse for them to obviously segregate. And so yeah, that eventually led on to women getting the rights to vote, be able to go in any jobs and stuff like that. And now that brings us on to modern day feminism, which is just being more supportive of them, which is just kind of a branch of women's rights, which I get I knew, but I never really put two and two together.